Why do you need to build bonds with your workplace colleagues? So the con of remote work is that it spoils you.
How should somebody approach, remote at an early stage company versus, when they have grown to be or a later stage startup?
In India, I think you could say remote has probably failed. Remote has not failed. Organizations don't want to do remote.
Maybe a few months back, some companies probably had 10 people in their content team. Now they can get the same output with just 2 members. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 6 of the Airtribe Podcast. Today we have a special guest joining us, Abhash, Vice President of Marketing at Springworks. Abhash is a very experienced marketing leader with a wealth of knowledge in acquiring customers, community building, content marketing, and copywriting. With more than 8 years of experience, he has worked with high-growth companies and thrives in ambitious, rapidly expanding organizations. Aside from his professional expertise, Abhash is a strong advocate for remote work and is extremely passionate about brand marketing. Hi Abhash, welcome to the Airtribe Podcast. How are you doing?
Doing good, Navneet. How are you?
I'm doing great. I think we are meeting after close to a year.
Yes, we are.
You did a couple of courses on Airtribe and we met the last time around the meetup that we did for the second cohort.
Yes, correct.
I was really looking forward to having you on this podcast because I have been following you. We have been kind of, friends for a while. And looking at your content on LinkedIn and Twitter, there were a bunch of things that I wanted to, get your views on and share with our community and the audience. So to start with, let's pick up the topic I think you are probably passionate about. You have been part of this podcast, right? Shape of Work.
Yes.
And there you have talked a lot about remote work. So I would love to know, what are your views on remote work before, during, and post-pandemic?
Sure. Not just the podcast. I have spoken about it a lot across platforms. Obviously, to set context for everyone, I work for a remote organization, fully remote organization. We have been so since the start of the pandemic, and we intend to be fully remote forever. Obviously, during the pandemic, almost everyone, not just me, thought that, things are going to change a lot. Most companies will be remote. That has turned out to be not the case. At least in India, it has not. In the US, there is still some amount of remote happening. But in India, I think you could say remote has probably failed. As in, remote has not failed. Organizations don't want to do remote. But we are pretty much happy with the way we do remote, and we intend to be remote forever at Springworks.
Okay. So you said in the US, there are some companies still doing it. But in India, most companies are not open to doing it. Why do you think so?
There are a lot of factors at play. I would say culture definitely is one of the factors, but then there are many, many nuanced factors as well that we generally don't consider. Take, for example, the fact that most of the people here may be living in joint families, 6, 7 odd people, and they might be living in a 2 BHK, right? So you don't really get a separate space. So those are the smaller things that we probably don't think about a lot, which may not be the case in the US, right? Because bigger homes, etc. Obviously, I'm not talking about SF. But yeah, those factors at play. But more importantly, I think it is to do with the fact that and now we are getting into the opinionated stuff, is the fact that all the managers that are in the system currently have gone through a system, right? Which has required them to be in office, do office politics, go for 5 chai sutta breaks throughout the day. I don't know. I'm not generalizing here, but most people who are listening to this would agree, right? They have, I just don't want to use certain words, but because they have gone through that particular system and process, it is their belief that if I have gone through this grind, so should other people in the system as well. And they are not open to the fact that times change, systems and processes can change. And due to that, the insecurity also creeps in, right? And I'm talking about bigger organizations where concept of middle managers exist, right? Obviously, not in too many high growth startups would that concept exist. But they also have to justify their position in the company. And one of the ways to do it is to bring people into an office, do meaningless meetings, do meaningless reviews, etc., right? And if you're able to do all of that online, it somehow diminishes the value of the process of the system. So it makes much more sense for them to have people be in the office. That's just my very opinionated take on this.
Okay, I think there are going to be lots of people out there who would not agree with this because of their own experiences. But if we talk about startups versus large companies, do you think there should be a different approach to how they approach remote? Because what I have seen in my experience, when you are in early stage, it's important that the core team is there so that they can brainstorm and quickly iterate, because they are in search for product market fit, and they would not want to add additional variables. When a company is post product market fit, they have a system in place, they have lots of things that are organized, streamlined, but do they need to always be in office? That's the bigger question. And I think the audience will benefit from knowing, based on your experiences so far, how should somebody approach remote at an early stage company versus when they have grown to be a growth stage, or a later stage startup.
Sure. No, totally in agreement with you there. That's one of the things that I have always maintained. If you are a very early stage startup, you are already playing with, like you said, too many variables. And remote is a very, very big variable, right? You don't want to introduce one that big a variable which is under your control. Most of the other variables that you're playing with are probably not as much under your control. But this is a binary decision, right? Either you are in office or remote. So it is definitely in your control. And I think I agree with the fact that, super early stage startups or even say 50-60% companies should not be remote. It's ideal for them to be sitting in a place together. But what I don't agree with what you said, and almost an insinuation that you made that somehow bigger companies are not agile enough. And at Springworks, we are a 180% organization, fully remote, spread out across India. Again, yeah, some people could debate 180 is still, a small company, but being fully remote, if you look at our agility, at any point, like many people would know who know me, we literally launch a side project every Friday on Product Hunt.
That's impressive.
Yeah, since, ChatGPT, we have taken that agility to another level. I would say at this point, we have 16 side projects in the work. And that is apart from the fact that we already have like 5 products in our main suite of products, right? So I think it's overrated also that, you somehow have to be in the office if you have to brainstorm, if you have to do things fast enough. There is a system to being agile as well. And that system is not a system of, daily stand-ups or scrum meetings and all of that. That's a system of having fun. And that's what, even if you go to Karthik's LinkedIn, that will come off over and over again. Our main DNA at Springworks, of course, we are a remote organization. We talk about that a lot. But our main DNA is, are we having fun? Every single day, that's the question we ask ourselves, right? We don't have a goal. We don't work with a goal of, now we are at 1 million ARR. How can we get to 10 million ARR in, say, 8 months, 10 months, whatever? I mean, yeah, that's very, very ambitious, but you get the point, right? Those sort of goals we don't have. I mean, obviously we track numbers. Obviously we see how we can grow stuff. But the main thing is, if we stop having fun with something, we move away from it. As simple as that.
That's quite interesting and also a little philosophical, perhaps. I think the core motivation for a lot of people who work in these companies comes from, are they having fun or not? And if they are not having fun, no matter what you do, like, how fast you are growing, or like, whether you give them an appraisal or a new fancy new designation, nothing works. It's quite interesting that you guys figured it out and it's working for you. In a remote kind of a setup, how do you approach building culture then? And all the remote companies that I know, they talk about an offsite once in 6 months or once in a year. One thing I always wonder, how do they actually build bonds, and do they really wait for 1 year or 6 months for that matter before they actually get to meet each other?
I have a fundamental problem with this. Why do you need to build bonds with your workplace colleagues? Like, what is the use case? Just explain it to me now that you are mentioning it. I'm saying it's good if it happens organically, very, very nice. But what is this obsession that we have that, you should have a bond with your work colleagues? You've come here to work on a certain problem statement, right? What is the need to become friends with these people, right? Which goes back to my point is, again, I'm not pointing out you in particular, right? It is in the builder or the owner of the organization is almost has this perverse incentive for their employees to be bonded to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Are you getting my point?
Yeah.
So that they stay together for a longer period of time, or they work better together. That's what I've been trying to say here, right? That perverse incentive has been there for the past 40, 50 years, right? You should be friends with your work colleagues. Why? Because, you will develop bonds and then better work will come out. Obviously, slightly better work will come out if you like the people that you work with. But the very concept of work, it's a transaction, right? I come from this SaaS space, and this is a joke that we do all the time, right? Your salary is a subscription that the organization is paying you to work for them, right? When did we decide that this transaction should go one step ahead, and now we need to be friends also? We need to hang out after work also. We need to drink or party together also. I don't know where this is obviously coming to the picture, because someone at the top sitting realized that if we put these systems into play, it helps us, right? Keep people, retain employee retention and all of the other concepts that come into the picture, right? So going back to your point, I would say this equation that we have, that work culture is equal to team bond, is a wrong equation overall. I don't agree with it. Work culture is about many other things, right? Work culture is about how you communicate with each other. Again, think of it in terms of developers, right? The developers only think in terms of APIs, right? Connect this to that and all of that. That's what I think of communication as well. And that's why I'm also excited about, we can come to AI separately as well, because that has been one of the challenges with, someone who has better communication skills ends up being, making more money, growing more in their careers. I think AI will help people who have bad communication skills be better at that, because communication should be thought of as an API, but that's an aside. So yeah, that's my point. Work culture should be how you communicate, how agile you are with how you do things, right? Work culture should be judged basis the number of follow-ups that you have to do, right? If a task has been decided upon by the person who assigned the task and the people who are responsible for doing the task, there should be no need of follow-ups in an ideal scenario. Obviously, I'm not saying So those are sort of the things that should define work culture much more than, humans bonding or, hanging out and all of that. And yes, why do remote companies? We also do every 6 months or so. That's more to put names to faces, interact with each other. We hang out for like 3 days. But yeah, that's about it. You don't want to become, lifelong buddies or chuddy buddies at work, right? You have your friends, you have people around you, you have your family around you. And I'm not saying that, you necessarily have to hang out with your family, because we all know that those are also challenges for many people. But find your tribe, right? Don't be restricted to making your workplace colleagues your tribe just because someone figured out 30, 40 years ago that it is a nice way for them to retain people and make them get more work out of them.
Very contrarian view right there. Even though you are saying maybe the leaders at the top of these companies, they have their own perverse incentives, I do feel there are pros to it. That's why they have been doing it. Leaders have been doing something like this because that works for them. And one part I do not agree with you is it's not just what's good for the leaders. I think they very strongly believe, most of them perhaps, that it's also good for the employees. So Abhash, you had very strong points on why remote can be better for some people, and also why it's probably not, a big incentive for managers and leaders to encourage remote work. But one thing that we haven't talked about so far is the cons of remote work. And I think you are in a very good position to, talk about it, because you have worked at different kinds of companies. And if I'm correct, this is the first one where you are working fully remotely.
Yes.
So what would be a few cons that, our audience should be aware of if they have to pick a company which is all in person versus all remote?
Sure. I mean, the biggest disadvantage of remote work is there aren't enough companies doing remote work. And that sort of should give you the answer. If you are looking to get started, you will find yourself at a disadvantage if you work at a remote organization. That's the truth of the matter. We are a fully remote organization. If you have never worked at a remote organization, you probably don't do well at Springworks, because our way of communication is fully async. We do as few meetings as possible. So the con of remote work is that it spoils you. You go to any other company, and why I'm saying is it spoils you is because of the fact that we discussed earlier. Remote work managers and organizations have not embraced remote work in India, which means very, very few companies in India are fully remote, right? Now, if you work at a remote setup, pure remote setup, again, many people just say remote and then you are in meetings all day, right? That is not remote. I'm talking about the kind of remote that we do, the kind of remote that proponents of remote work have built, right? Like GitLab and what's that company? Hey, founders' main company, Basecamp and all, right? Which is, focus on async, focus on as few meetings as possible, focus on over communication, focus on documenting everything. The challenge with getting into a setup like this will be the next time you move companies, you're going to have a culture shock. And pretty much again, going back to your question of culture, yes, how the way we do work is also become a huge part of culture now. I would say that would be one of the biggest cons. The other big con would be, and this is true especially for early career employees, right? As much as I would love to say, and again, whatever the cons are, again, bear in mind, this is because of the fact that remote work has not picked up in India. No one is going to do, and that's a fact that we have to live with. I've given many opinions, but one of the facts that we can all agree on is it has not picked up in India, right? Everyone has been called back to office. To a peer, 1 year into your career, if you've just gotten out of college, one person who is living in, I don't know, Guwahati, versus your same peer who is living in Bangalore. As much as I would love for this not to be true, the person living in Bangalore has a huge, huge advantage, right? So that would be another con. If you were to flip it, I mean, you could always come and live in Bangalore and still work remotely, but why would you? Because one of the you will make one of your bigger advantages disadvantage, right? Like you would save a lot of money if you live in a smaller town or a city, which would not be the case in Bangalore. So yeah, these sort of, because working in an office will be a forcing function for you to move to Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, Delhi, Mumbai, it will by default give you those opportunities that your peers who are living in smaller towns. And by the way, there are enough small towns now also with decent networking opportunities. Like for example, Surat has now become one of the big SaaS company sort of culture cities in India. So is the case with something like an Indore, right? But yeah, I'm talking about much smaller towns where many of our colleagues are from. And so if you're already 5+ years experience in your career, then you already know what are the other ways to tackle this, right? You don't have to be in a bigger city like Bangalore. You know all the places. You already have some connections, you know, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of these exist. You know who to reach out to for a particular task. But early career people, I think, I hate saying this, but definitely at a disadvantage. If they are not in a bigger city, let's put it that way, as opposed to remote versus in office. What we are also discounting here in this conversation is how things are changing very, very fast, right? We don't know what the world of work looks like 3-5 years from now. And obviously, I'm not coming from the remote or in-office perspective here. I'm talking about obviously artificial intelligence, generative AI in particular, and how that is changing things a lot. So I don't know if, many people will be, again, strong prediction, opinion, whatever you want to call it, many people will be working full time, especially people with optionality, people who are very, very good at their skills. I don't see them working for one single organization going forward. Because if you can replicate your same skill with a playbook that you create for yourself for solving a particular problem, and let's say, because I'm from marketing, let's say go-to-market is a skill that you're very good at. You know very, very well that if you have strong signs of a product market fit for a particular product, you have now done it for 3 companies. You have taken it to, say, the US market, European market, MENA, Southeast Asia. Now, instead of, and obviously all the other factors come into the picture, whether you're having fun or not, but let's say you're very good at that. Why don't take that skill and every 2 months, you take that skill for a different company and help them move into that market, right? Obviously, you get paid much, much more, because at the end of the other company, they don't have to worry about benefits and all. They just have to pay you contract sum. And contract sum for doing a particular task and doing that very well is going to be very, very high. Yeah. So we are looking at those scenarios as well here. Again, this is only true for people with some amount of experience. But yeah, that's another factor at play as well.
So are we talking about the opportunity that, all these senior folks will have in terms of working for multiple companies at the same time?
Yes.
That's going to change the way we have looked at jobs, for the last 50 odd years. The other thing I think about when I see how generative AI or AI in general is bringing about the changes in, how you can get your work done much faster. For example, maybe a few months back, some companies probably had 10 people in their content team, and now they can get the same output with just 2 members. That's a real possibility. They can just collaboratively work with something like ChatGPT, and if they are good at asking the right questions, they can get a lot of preliminary work done by the system and have the same output for the company. If you apply this to all the other functions in a company, one thing I think about, and I can connect the dots here, what we have discussed so far. If the overall size of companies is going to decrease, for example, if a company If someone had to build a company of 100 members to probably generate a revenue of $2 to $3 million, I see it's a real possibility that maybe just 10 people would be required. Midjourney has only about 10 people in the team, and they are doing more than $100 million in revenue. So that's how it starts. I feel, at least for single product companies, the average size of teams is going to reduce. And if the average size of teams is going to reduce, then there is a possibility that after a couple of years, of operating and reaching product market fit, they could actually afford to go remote and still be as effective as they were. I feel there is a real possibility that more and more companies will be remote in the future because they would not have to collaborate that much. Lesser the team size, easier the collaboration.
Correct.
Something, you will also agree with.
Correct.
So what are your thoughts on that?
Again, that's just, speculation, right? But I think the thesis that you're proposing here, I'm in agreement as well. One thing is certainly going to happen is, like you said, the average size of organizations will reduce, right? Because, you don't need probably one person spending 3 hours, drafting an email, that sort of stuff, right? Because the first draft will already be presented to you. The probable mistake that we will see a lot of companies make, and which is already happening, is them trying to hire a generalist. And I hate the term prompt engineer because there is no engineering in it. It's literally writing English. Hiring this generalist prompt engineer. It's already happening. So what they're trying to do is, can we eliminate one graphic designer, one marketer, and one, ops guy or something, with one generalist? All they have to do is write prompts, right? The thing is, you still need to have the understanding of those innate skills to be able to even know what to ask, right? It's that typical meme that we see these days. Graphic designers, the job will only get eliminated if the clients know what exactly they need from us, right? That meme that is going around, which is very, very true because you don't even know what you want. So what I agree with, and by the way, there are enough examples of places where this is also not true, is, which is the cliche that I also keep repeating. AI is not going to take your job. Someone who knows how to use AI is probably going to, which is, by the way, not true in many manufacturing sector and all. Literally AI is taking your jobs. But of course, we live in our bubble of tech startups and all. So
I think, people who keep saying on LinkedIn and Twitter, people who know AI will take your job, they have a clear incentive there. They want to sell you their tools.
Correct. That's also the case. But there is a good point in there that, a graphic designer using AI will be able to produce much better results than a random person just because they are good at writing prompts. Because there are, again, nuances come into the picture when you have to. The first draft is not what you're going to put out, right? It's probably going to be the 8th draft. And the 8th draft, that is the difference, right? With AI, 8th draft is possibly just 6 more prompts, right? So that's the beauty of something like AI. But the remote thing seems like a speculation at this point. Let's see how that pans out.
Thanks a lot, Abhash, for coming to the podcast. It was really fun talking to you. And more than that, I learned a lot.
Thanks a lot for having me, Navneet. I had fun as well. And I hope we get some comments about my opinionated comments that I made on the podcast.
We definitely will.
Happy to, see counter opinions and all from the audience.